Welcome back, troglodytes, to your daily dose of guitar information, the Trogly's Guitar Show. Man, people have been asking me to review these things forever, but for the 30th anniversary of the Nevermind album, we have a reissue of the Jagstang. So if you're not familiar, the Jag-stang is actually a creation by Kurt Cobain himself, because he was well known for using Jaguars as well as Mustang guitars in live situations pretty much for the entire Nevermind tour, as well as in the music video Smells Like Teen Spirit. And Fender approached him to do, a signature guitar back in like 1992. And the story goes, Kurt just took a photo of both of those guitars, sliced it in half, put them together, said, hey, that's what I want you to make. Now, whether that was a lifelong dream of his or some of the stories online say that was just a joke and he just wanted Fender to make some crazy guitar, they stuck with it and kept using it. So, in 1993, there were a couple of prototypes done up for him that he was able to use on stage, and then later on in 1995, there was a Crafted in Japan run that lasted through 2004. Now today, those things run anywhere between $1,200 to $2,200 plus used. And it wasn't that long ago, in 2018, we saw one of his prototypes come up for sale from the custom shop version that he would use. But here we are in 2021. Fender has sponsored this review and demo of their new one here. So what's different this time? It's crafted in Mexico. So it's the first time that the Jagstang has been made in Mexico that I'm aware of anyways. And this is what it looks like. Yeah. It's a quirky guitar, maybe an acquired taste. Like if you are a big Kurt Cobain Nirvana fan, you're going to love this thing. But if you're not a big fan, you're just going to think that that's kind of a freaky looking guitar. Like the Mustang and the Jaguar, they're not that different of a guitar, but having this bigger upper bout body and then they kind of extended it down here, I always thought this looked like a bunny rabbit. Like you've got the bunny's face right here and these are its two ears. So hey, if you like rabbits, you can like one of these things too. It's just an interesting blending of both of those models. So obviously you got your Jaguar top half right here, and then everything else is very Mustang-like as far as like your layout of your controls go, as far as what type of bridge you want. I mean, sure, we've got a humbucker in the bridge position instead of a single coil, but you've got those little switches, so it's more so a Mustang that's just been a little bit modified. But what I'm really proud of Fender for is even though this is a made in Mexico guitar and they generally use Pal Ferro fretboards on these, this has a rosewood board. I'm really glad they got that spec the exact same as the Crafted in Japan run. So maybe one day I'll have to still review one of the original ones to see how it stands up in comparison. But so far as these things go, I would say this feels pretty good. It's got that full-on gloss finish on the back, unfinished fretboard because you generally don't finish over rosewood. Same thing with the body, and it's just kind of a nice color. These are offered in two different colors. We've got this lovely lady here in Sonic Blue, and then we've got Fiesta Red over here. They only offer them in rosewood boards, so if you wanted a maple boarded version, sorry, you're out of luck on this one unless you want to swap the neck out. And big news, they also make these in right-handed versions because, Cobain was a lefty, so they're just being nice to us righties making them like this. So yes, left-handed and right-handed models are available. Now these things are kind of expensive. They're $1,249.99, which compared to the used Crafted in Japan run is very reasonable, especially for a brand new one. It'll be up to us to decide if it's worth it buying the newer ones or an older one today. So I hope this video helps you make that decision if you are now interested in one of these. So to learn a little bit more about what makes this guitar special, let's go ahead and throw it on the workbench and take an individual look at its parts and specs. Inside the Jagstang reissue, this really reminds me a lot of my Spider-Man Mustang video. Check that thing out. That is the coolest Mustang to ever have been made, in my opinion. But all the routes are very similar to that, except for we have a humbucker route here because obviously we have a humbucker in here. That's part of one of his modifications. But that's all shielded off. You get your little barcode right in here. But let's take a minute to talk about our pick guard here. So regular Mustang controls here. So in the middle position, each pickup is off. Now you can turn it on by doing that, or you can turn it on by doing this. As long as you're just doing one pickup, from me toying around, I did not hear any difference. Now when you will hear a difference is when you kick your other pickup on. When these are facing opposite of each other, you're going to get that quacky, out of phase, really thin, anemic sound. Now, that sounds good sometimes, but most times you're probably going to want to keep them in series. So having them on this way or this way, as long as they're together, you're going to get that regular middle position sound. Or you can just have the bridge pickup on like that or that. A little bit confusing, but just know each side is on and you want them to be like this. Not necessarily like that unless you want it to be quacky. Our neck pickup reads about 5.5 k ohms and the bridge is 7.28 k ohms. Then for fun, we'll do the middle position. That puts us at about 3.17. I guess I should test that to make sure. Is that the same? Yeah, it's the same. And if they're out of phase, it still reads the same, but it sounds way different. I imagine Kurt liked that because he wouldn't accidentally hit them when he's strumming and doing his thing. So you have that instead of any type of a toggle switch anywhere. Now, I could be wrong on this, but I believe they actually changed the pickguard up just a tad too. I mean, take a good look at this area. And now take a look at this older one. It almost appears like that came to a little bit more of a point than this one does and cuts a little bit short, but I'm not sure. It looks like that in Fender's stock photos, but now that I have it in person, it looks almost like what it used to be. But I saw some people commenting about that on Fender's Instagram post, so I thought I'd at least do that comparison for you. Are you guys ready for these super fancy names they gave them? Jagstang single coil. Jagstang humbucker. That's just what they're called. I don't see any super fancy markings on these necessarily, but you can see how that all gets wired up on those little dip switches. And another Fender barcode. Now onto the trem. This is our routes right in here. You can see through to the alder body that this has. And the trem secures with 5 screws right there. And this is what that looks like. It comes from the Mustang. I always thought that looked kind of like a spider bite or a snake bite, something like that. That just reads Dynamic Fender Vibrato. It's basically just a stripped down Jazzmaster version that you can't lock, to put it into very simple terms. But your strings go through that bar, which puts tension on that. And then the bar you put into place right here, and then you lock it down with an Allen key, and then that helps you to compress the springs on the backside, giving you your warble effect. And this is what our bridge looks like, also from the Mustang. It just goes in the body like so. As far as our controls, these knobs come from a jazz bass. I can't say I like the stock Fender configuration for where 10 is, but I mean, I guess it makes sense. You're looking down, this is 0, that's 10, but normally it'd be like over here. I don't know, it just looks weird. Then your output jack on the front. As far as your wiring, nothing too fancy in here, just 250K pots. And this cavity's all nice and shielded off too. Now this body, it's a little bit strange looking, I'll agree with you. But when I sat down to strum this just to make sure I knew what I was talking about here, they didn't change anything. This extra bump down here helps fight against any type of neck diving situations you might have and really keeps it balanced in your lap very well. So it might be a bit unorthodox, but it works. Would I probably buy one of these for myself? Nah. I mean, I like Nirvana's songs, but I'm not a die-hard fan. So the fact that he designed it doesn't really do much for me, but I get it. If you are a big Kurt Cobain fan, you're probably cursing at your screen right now. But I do appreciate it as the bunny head guitar. Not to be confused with this bunny head guitar. But anyways, we have a maple neck with a rosewood fretboard. Man, I love that spec. I already told you that before, but I'm going to say it again. I'm so glad they did not cheap out and put Pal Ferro on these. That would have made a lot of people upset. Even though a lot of the Made in Mexico Fenders have that, I think this is a sign for the future. Maybe are we going to start to see more rosewood? That would make me happy because this just feels better than Pal Ferro in my opinion. And it's a bit more traditional. But we've got 22 vintage frets, they call them. And I might be mistaken, but that almost looks like a real mother of pearl inlay to me. Because it's got so much color and character, it moves in the light, but this all looks pretty good to me, especially after I conditioned it. So here's where things get interesting. This is a short scale Fender at 24 inches. So it's kind of similar to those made in Japan exclusive guitars that we talked about a couple of weeks ago, where I had a very hard time keeping those things in tune. So the key to short scale instruments are heavy string gauges. Unfortunately, these don't ship with anything too heavy, so I would love, absolutely love to play heart-shaped box on this, but I know it would never hold that tuning without something heavier on it. I still have a couple of those supersonics if you're interested. But our nut measures 1.57 inches, so that's actually pretty small, and 1.99 by the 12th, with a first fret neck depth of 0.85, 0.9 by the 12th, wow. That definitely lives up to its reputation of a slim C neck profile. Here's what that looks like at the 1st and the 12th fret. Pretty small and rounded, but then it widens up just a hair, but stays very slim. Very easy to play chords on, which I would imagine came in handy for him. But even when you get up here, some guitars feel really wide. This one does not do that. Like, this is really skinny. This is just like slightly bigger than most guitars at this area, or maybe right here. So I could imagine doing solo work would be kind of comfortable. I mean, you run into the back heel right here pretty soon because it's 24 inches instead of the regular 25.5 that most full-scale Fenders have. But the side profile view here's pretty sweet. Nice looking rosewood board. And that is a synthetic bone nut on this one. Moving up here, Fender Jagstang. They have our truss rod adjustment all the way down here. Now, that looks a bit tight to be able to adjust without taking your pick guard off. I mean, it might be possible, but I'm thinking you'll at least have to take your pick guard off. But that's nice they did that style because then we don't have to worry about that black plastic capped off truss rod up here. This looks like a higher end Fender than it is. Now, one thing I really love about this headstock, tell me, do you see what it is? Love the Fender logo because there's a little bit of figuring within the wood that depending on which angle you have it, it turns dark. It's like this guitar could be good or evil. And that's why this belongs within our Halloween special month. But you've got your Fender logo, Jagstang as well. Oh man, it's a shame they didn't have these speeds coming off of it like you normally find. And we have vintage style tuners on here with a single string tree. Moving on to the back side, we don't have any routes back here because it's all top routed, but your strap button is a little bit off center. Like it's not perfect, it's just a little bit over there to kind of mess with this. I mean, this guitar takes offset to a new extreme because not only is it offset up here, but it's also offset down there. It's the original double offset guitar. But no comfort cuts or anything back here, surprisingly. The F-stamped neck plate using 4 screws as the bolt-on neck. Straight up maple neck, no skunk stripes or anything like that. You don't have any crazy figuring or anything, but it's just nice plain maple wood. It's all a gloss finish. You can see your vintage style tuners back here. And we have a serial number, made in Mexico, 2021. QC-wise, everything seemed okay on this. I mean, there were a few screws that were over-tightened, but at the end of the day, not the biggest deal. I did see there was like a small lacquer chip right there where they installed the nut. The other side was much more mild on that. But besides those few things, I didn't notice anything too crazy. All assembled with bar, it weighs 8 pounds, 2.2 ounces. Let's go ahead, plug it in, and hear how this thing sounds. Okay, let's go ahead and run through the tones of this thing. You just heard the bridge pickup. This thing's kind of interesting. It's a little bit darker than most humbuckers. Which kind of works well for Cobain's style of music. Now we'll try just the neck pickup here. I'd say that nails that really well. Now we'll try the middle position, the combination of them all. It's got an interesting tone. It captures the darkness of this, but yet the spank of the neck pickup. That's interesting. And now we'll try that all out of phase. Kind of see what I was talking about, that quackiness. It's kind of interesting when you do like some punk rock style riffs. I'll show you on the distortion channel later on. And we're in drop D tuning to play a lot of my favorite Nirvana songs. Well, technically it's below that. So far, I'm impressed with how well this does stay in tune as a shorter scale instrument after playing those supersonics. This is much better. But now we'll just do a combination of the stuff. So I hope that gives you some sort of an idea of the clean tones on this thing. I'm actually quite impressed with it. Now let's go ahead and try some distortion. This guitar's pretty touch sensitive, and you can use that to your advantage, as I was just showing you with that heart-shaped box riff. Now that we know all about the new signature Kurt Cobain Jag-stang, what are my final thoughts on this thing? I'm proud to say it, I was wrong about this guitar. Holy cow. It looks doofy, but it plays phenomenally. I mean, maybe it's just because I haven't actually sat down and learned some of my favorite Nirvana songs. I mean, I had never played Lithium before today. Now, Heart-Shaped Box, that's always been my favorite from the Guitar Hero days, but this guitar just has everything Cobain is known for. The pickups are really well voiced for it. I had a great time just playing some punk rock stuff. So I guess what I'm trying to say is if you need inspiration to kind of break out of the box and play something a little bit different than the style that you always do on the guitars that you own, you know, maybe it would be worth having one of these things around. I said earlier I probably wouldn't own one of these, but now I'm kind of like, maybe I would, because it's a goofy shape. I'll give it to you. It's a goofy shape, but it's good. The way that the weight is pushed down just makes it perfect. It sits on a strap right. You're not having to hoist the neck up or keep it in position wherever you want it. And now it makes sense why he wanted these giant horns, because then it sits a little bit lower on you and that just feels more natural. Now for me, I would set this up with heavier gauge strings. I just had this in drop D. The actual tuning's I think a step lower than that. Because with the standard 9 or 10 gauge strings, I mean, the tuning stability wasn't the best, but I know for a fact, as long as you put heavier strings on these things, you're gonna have a lot of fun with it. I'd probably like a stop bar variety myself, but if you need the whammy bar, it is here. And it actually seems to function really well. You don't get too much upwards movement on it, but you have lots of dive bomb potential. So, troglodytes, I hope you enjoyed checking out the Jag-stang. I did not expect that I would like it as much as I did. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, and we will catch you tomorrow on the next episode. Take care.